Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland on the Majority Report. It is a pleasure to welcome back to the program Jeet Heer, national affairs correspondent for The Nation magazine. Jeet, we are about 45 minutes from at least the scheduled vote in the Senate on, they're calling it a continuing resolution, but it really isn't. I mean, it is just a Republican budget. There's enough that's changed in there that I think it qualifies as a Republican budget. It's not a continuing resolution.
You called it the Doge Empowerment Act on Twitter, which I think is pretty apt.
But I think the actual impact of it is that it is basically empowering Doge.
Yeah.
Give me your.
By the way, it's not just Sam that's saying this. Donald Trump is saying this. Like, he's like chortling on social media, like, thank you, Chuck Schumer. Like, you've given us everything we wanted.
And I mean, just walk us through. You were just saying when we came on, and Nancy Pelosi came out and called out Chuck Schumer.
Yes.
Now she's from San Francisco, so she's completely. But give us your perspective on that. Like,
I do think that there's actually opening up a serious divide in the party between the Senate and Democrats, and not just the Senate Democrats. Basically, Chuck Schumer and a few kind of centrist in his circle, and the rest of the party. And it's very notable that, like Nancy Pelosi, yes, San Francisco, but
I was joking about that.
No, but every House Democrat has including Hakeem Jeffries, is basically not on board for this. And one is seeing a kind of, if one is unkind, you would say, the rats leaving the sinking ship. Or more, properly, the sort of stalwart, vote blue no matter who, blue MAGA diehards, they're not on board for this. I did one saw last night an incredible array of characters who have defended all the worst compromises that this party has made over the last 20 years, suddenly saying okay, this is too much, And then we'll mention, your listeners are, I think, very savvy on social media, but, Neera Tanden, who, in addition to having worked as a staffer for Joe Biden, is the only person in the world who has ever been denied a cabinet level position because they tweeted too much. And specifically, they tweeted over the last 8 years in constant battle against the left wing of the party and against so-called Bernie bros. And suddenly, Neera Tanden is saying, what the hell are we doing? What is Schumer doing? This is the one leverage that they've ever had, and they're giving it up. And this is really bad politics.
Can I read some quotes from the centrist Democrats if you want?
Read these quotes. But Jeet, I want to get your take on how much of this, there's always some senators, Congress people out there. I mean, the Congress people had the ability to take this vote and really have it have no implications because they knew it was going to pass anyways. And a lot of times that's a way politicians hide. Let's hear these quotes, and then I just want to get your assessment as to how sincere the reactions from these people sound. A lot more sincere than just covering their vote.
Well, they're putting their name on the record. This is just a short aside, but Becca Boleyn, Schumer is misreading the moment. I wrote this down. Steve Cohen, longtime Democrat from Tennessee, I think. It doesn't look good for the leader. And you have Seth Moulton, who is the most centrist, pro-military industrial complex Democrat imaginable, going on the record to criticize Chuck Schumer. And the article that we haven't gotten to yet, and we will, I'm sure, later, the explosive article in CNN about how even centrist Democratic House members are urging AOC to primary Chuck Schumer is... the divide between the House Democrats, who every 2 years are responsible for voters, and the ivory tower senators, who the ones who are rumored to be voting yes on cloture are either retiring or aren't up for 4 or 6 years. I've never seen such a divide between both the two chambers, and fury from the House Democrats.
The
Yeah.
party is splitting open. I mean, before you read the quotes, I just want to emphasize there's that material difference between if you're in the House and in the Senate. It's every 2 years. And if you're in the House, you hear from your constituents a lot, and you have to pay attention to them because your vote is coming up and you have to raise money. And these are the people that are getting, like, at the town halls, getting an earful because, and they're much closer to the base of the party and are hearing that, like, the real anger. And it's the anger not just from people that watch the Majority Report and have been staunch progressives all along, but from mainstream centrist Democrats, who had supported Joe Biden, but who are freaked out, frankly, rightly so, about what Trump and Musk are doing, who see what Trump and Musk are doing as an existential threat to American democracy, who basically believe what Democrats have said, that, this is like a fascist threat, and then suddenly see their leader say, this is a fascist threat, but we will surrender and not use our leverage. That is what is happening. The House Democrats are listening to their constituents, and the senators, because they're not up for a while, they think they have the luxury of ignoring voters.
All right, let's. I want to just do a little experiment here. Let's steel man Chuck Schumer's arguments, which is an experiment because I have never done that for Chuck Schumer.
I was actually thinking of writing a column about this, like just making the best possible case for Chuck Schumer.
And he said one of them. He said, and I'm going by some of his tweets and also what he just said. We just played a little clip of his interview with Chris Hayes last night. If we enter a shutdown, congressional Republicans would weaponize their majorities to cherry pick which parts of the government to reopen. So, in other words, they would. I'm not sure how they would do that.
But they're already doing that. I mean, this is what Musk is already literally doing. That's what Doge is about.
They're shutting down. They're shutting down like Social Security Administration offices, HHS offices, and then they're reopening them in red districts or red states.
Yeah. He's saying that this will empower. This will, if we do that, if we had the shutdown, they will do what they're already doing. So we have to vote for this bill, which will empower them to do what they're doing even more so. That argument does not fly.
And I would say, like, there is the only argument. I will say this. I think that there is a more legal path for them to do what he's suggesting if they shut down the government. Like, there are provisions for the OMB during a shutdown to deem which agencies are essential or to presumably open up certain things. But it seems to me, once you have it within a legal framework, then you have the opportunity to do some politics around it. But
yeah, exactly. And I actually think, if we're going to steel man Schumer's argument, and I think, from stuff he said and Carville has said and other people have said, I think actually the strongest argument is that they think that this is for the courts, that the courts, what Trump is doing is so blatantly illegal, the courts will, shoot it down, and they have been shooting it down. And that is like the place where the battle is going to be fought at. And I think, that some people counter, well, what if Trump ignores the courts as he claims he's going to do? But actually, if you actually look at it, I've some of the legal analysts I've read are basically saying that that's not going to happen, and it's not happening, because it's not just a matter of Trump. If the courts say something, you have to have these government bureaucrats execute it, and these government bureaucrats don't want to be the ones to take the fall for Trump, right? So the courts. So from the Schumer, the best argument for Schumer is that we have an instrument to stop Trump. It's the courts, and that's much more effective than doing the shutdown. Now, but I think what you were leaning towards, and you can spell it out, is even if you do that, you have to make a political argument so that you can build a majority in support of that.
Assuming that the courts have the ability to actually enforce what they're suggesting, which is, increasingly difficult, it seems like, because the fact of the matter is, the longer it's drawn out, the more you're destroying these agencies anyways. And every time, at least, we have had a CR or we've had a government shutdown, there's always a provision to try and make people whole back, going back retrospectively. If they don't, it is because Republicans are blocking it. Like this is a political fight at this point. The material difference between what Doge is doing now and what they have indicated they're going to do in the future, and a government shutdown, what they could do legally during a government shutdown, the material difference, it seems to me, is almost too small to measure.
Yeah.
But the political difference is massive. And also setting the precedent that you're forcing them to do this through legal channels, which makes it far more transparent and far easier to argue against politically.
No, I think that's right. And I'll say a further point on that political argument. Like, you could actually use the political battle to help the courts. That's to say, you could use the shutdown to get the Republicans to put in a provision saying that if the courts decide something, the Trump administration has to obey it, right? Like, you could use the leverage that you have to strengthen the power of the courts. But beyond that, it is an aversion to politics. And we've seen this like over the last, at least the last 10 years, maybe even longer, where the Democrats really prefer to avoid doing politics and to have the courts do their dirty work, or do their, execute their agenda. And I think one saw that with all the sort of, Mueller investigation stuff, going after Trump in the courts, which was justified, but which was never a substitute for like actually doing politics against Trump. And it is the belief that, we ourselves have no legitimacy, we have no power, but that there are these bipartisan, universally beloved institutions, the FBI and the courts, that can carry it out. And at the root of that is a real aversion to politics. It is an aversion. Basically, you have people who are deeply conflict averse. And I sort of like understand that. Like, I don't like to get into arguments myself. But if you have that mentality, you should not actually go into politics. You should find another line of work. Become an accountant. I actually don't know why they have taken the job. Do you think
that risk averseness, because Emma has a theory that the reason why you're seeing Schumer and Gillibrand, and I can see, I can come up with a scenario where Schumer's like, I'm going to do this to service my frontline Democrats who can't vote against it. I'm steel manning him now. But Gillibrand, that's a weird coincidence. I mean, these are two blue states here, and she is adamant.
New York. I mean, that's
But she's also the head of the DSCC, right? So she's worried about she has two incentives here. It's the one that I said earlier, where these are the Wall Street senators, right? And she's really in bed with crypto. So I think now that she knows her career is kind of, Jonathan Cohen made this point, now that she's not going to be president anymore, her 2020 run fell flat. She's just no longer has the pretense anymore of being a progressive. So she's just all in with Wall Street, all in with crypto, and they are panicked about the Trump tariffs and the destabilization of the economy. And why and what government shutdowns do, people may not realize this, is that it freaks the stock market out, even in the best of times. So it would be a compounding effect of the insanity that Trump is wreaking on the economy. So what she and Schumer are hearing are, just be good stewards, help stabilize this thing, and we'll reward you later. And that's what I'm thinking is happening.
Yeah, I want to add another aspect to this, which is that Gillibrand kind of got burned by being a progressive, especially on the Me Too stuff, where she took a very strong stance against Al Franken. And that was actually, I think, the right stance, and I admire for it, but also really burned her with the donor class, who are not happy with that. And I think that actually contributed to some of the problems she had in 2020 in terms of getting donors. And I think that everything that she's done in not just on this issue, but other stuff, including her comments on Como, basically indicate that she's trying to make nice with the donor class to, fix up those bridges. And I think that is her political trajectory, that she kind of has seen that, if you're so dependent on donor money and you really take a stance that's against them, that's not good. And it's especially not good, frankly, if you're thinking of maybe not running again, having a kind of future career that might benefit from having friends in Wall Street.
I mean, that to me makes the most sense in this situation. And also, like, I mean, Emma's saying, the donor class, because they're, they understand the importance of government functioning to their business interests. They're also risk averse. I mean, it is this sort of like consultancy class, like corporate mentality.
And to speak more about the New York Democrats, I mean, basically, there's a little bit of history to this, which is that, coming out of the 2020 election, where Biden didn't do as well as he had hoped, and the Democrats didn't, you kind of had this new political formation that consisted of these sort of popularist people like David Shor, Matt Iglesias, teaming up with the sort of crypto people and with the sort of Zionist these groups all shared was a belief that the Democrats had gone too far to the left, had become too dependent on small donor money, and that you needed to push back. Iglesias and Shore provided the ideological rationale. The crypto people and the sort of Wall Street money provided it, and the Israel lobby provided the already existing political infrastructure. And what this was basically a counter-revolutionary formation within the Democratic Party. And it was designed to basically push the Democrats back to the right. And one saw it especially, in the sort of squad members that were defeated, Bowman and
Cori Bush.
Cori Bush, but more broadly, like just the type of people that they promote, and this political formation is particularly strong in New York, because of the sort of closeness of Wall Street, and that is basically the New York, the dominant faction in the New York Democratic Party, and it's why they suck.
I love the idea of like, we really got to do something about we getting too much small donor.
The third way in their report on like fixing the Democratic Party, they say we have to rely less on small donor money.
Yep.
It's like, you fill up the points. If you don't get small donor money, then what money are you relying on? It's basically saying we have to be more reliant on crypto and Wall Street. And Schumer and a lot of these New York Democrats are very heavily involved in all this stuff. And so weirdly, even though New York, is seen as a blue state, it is the epicenter of a sort of counter-revolutionary political formation within the party.
Continuing on to Steelman Schumer, this is the theory that I just find to be fascinating. He said that, like, if you do not fight this now, what do you think is going to happen in 6 months when they come back with next year's bill, which we now know, at the very least, Trump has signed off this week on essentially the Republicans going in and cutting Medicaid. Mm-hmm. And they say, he says, according to Steve Dennis, and I think he's a reporter for Bloomberg, Schumer tells me Republicans might try to jam Democrats again in September, but thinks Trump will be less popular then, and Republican appropriation might be more willing to stand up to him. But they refuse to do so now.
With a photo of him sitting.
Effing blinkered can you get? Like, as soon as I hear those words, I hear Obama talk about the fever's going to break. Biden says the fever's going to break. They all say it's all going to go away. Trump is going to alienate these people. And like, what, like in what world?
Yeah, I mean, this idea of like that there's a faction of Republican moderates who will break with Trump and fix things, and that we have to like appeal to them, and we have to like do all our politics to like elevate and like win over these people. I think belongs not in the field of politics, but psychopathology. and in particular of the delusions. I think you've talked about on the show before, but Chuck Schumer literally has imaginary friends. He calls. Do you know this about this?
We're starting a program next week on this, where we're going to interview a Bailey every week from New York State.
Yeah. And these are like, well, first of all, I love the fact that his imaginary friends, he first called them the O'Reillys, but then he thought that's too ethnic, and we'll call them the Baileys. So his imaginary friends.
Oh, is that right? I didn't know about that part of the story.
Yeah, no, originally they were called the O'Reillys. And now, and so basically his imaginary friends are not just sort of centrist Republicans, but centrist Republicans who are Irish people passing as white. Right. So he has these imaginary friends in his mind. He has a whole scenario for them. George Bailey is a fireman. The wife works part-time in insurance because that's what women do in modern America, work part-time to support their husband.
Her kids, meanwhile, are like having kids of their own. She's still not going to go back into the workforce, according to her.
That's right. Yeah. And these are like, like they're swing voters. They can go either way. And if the Democrats are strong, he originally invented the O'Reillys Baileys during the War on Terror. And it was like, oh, these are the people who love waterboarding. And we have to like... which I mean, if I really want to come down on this, it's basically anti-Irish bigotry. Like he is like sort of positing the Irish as this Neanderthal class that are not very intelligent, can be easily swayed, and love violence. And I'm sorry.
I did not know that Mr. Bailey was a fireman in this in Chuck Schumer's mind. But I will say this. I mean, it explains on some level the idea that he is using firemen in the wake of 9/11 were obviously one of the most sensitive class of people in New York to what took place on 9/11, because they all knew somebody who died in the towers. Or there, and the level of sort of knee-jerk anger that is associated with that. I mean,
I have to actually, unfortunately, I just quickly checked the link, and I have to offer a correction.
Okay.
Bailey O'Reilly, who changed his name to Bailey because he wanted to be seen as white, actually works for an insurance company.
And his wife is a part-time firefighter.
His wife works part-time for a doctor's office. Actually, I think the insurance company thing is significant because this explains why we cannot have universal Medicare, because
exactly.
Chuck Schumer's imaginary Irishman passing as white works for insurance and does not want to hear about Medicare for all. So correct. All the fireman stuff was a brain glitch on my part.
But the big thing about Schumer assuming that Trump is going to be less popular and in September, and he might be. Mm-hmm. He might not be, but he might be. And maybe he's 5 points less popular. Maybe he's 8 points less popular. Maybe he's down in like Joe Biden territory in terms of being unpopular. But it also completely discounts something that I just don't understand how they don't understand this. Elon Musk is out there as Trump's enforcer with an unlimited amount of money to deploy against any lawmaker who breaks in terms of like the primaries. And September still not close enough to 2026, where Elon Musk couldn't dump in $10 million in the way that you or I go and purchase a book, essentially, and change the dynamic in a primary race in the Republican Party. And all of those Republicans have to be completely sensitive to that. So it may be the case that Trump is less popular, but that does not necessarily translate into less. Sort of like into, a wobbly spine, as it were, for these Republican lawmakers.
No. And if we've seen anything over the last 10 years, the trajectory is for the Republican Party to become more pro-Trumpist and MAGA and this Elon Musk thing just like adds to that. But the dynamic is like if you stand up to Trump, then you get exiled from the party, right? And so therefore, to put your and this has happened to anyone, any of these great Republican champions that the Democrats have elevated, like Liz Cheney, like Kissinger, like they all get exiled from the party because Trump will come out against them and will use his social media power and his MAGA fan base. And so therefore, like you're putting yourself all your faith in a faction that has already been defeated, that has already has like no power, whatever. And so it's a non-existent faction within the Republican Party, and which can never really arise again because of Musk and Trump, and also voters who are literally figments of your imagination. That is the premise and basis of his strategy. And I gotta say, we're trying to steel man him. That seems like a bad bet.
Oh my gosh, it seems so crazy. And then what was fascinating is that, and I don't even know if they've maintained this fiction. They're going to offer. They're insisting, and this is what Schumer got, was a vote on a 30-day CR to punt, and the vote's obviously going to lose, but they're going to be allowed to vote on it, and it's going to lose. My guess would be 47-53, and Schumer's going to call that a win. We got the vote on something that they already knew was losing, and in what world do they think this? Does Schumer think this provides them cover? Because there's a huge disconnect here, right? Like the thing that's changed, even in the 20 some odd years where things got somewhat more, where information got more democratized, right? You had blogs and this and that, but and blogs didn't reach the same sort of didn't have the same reach as social media does in many respects, but. It seems to me now that anybody who understands and could be aware that there was a vote on a 30-day CR that they convinced the Republicans to have, for that to mean anything to anybody at this point, they need to have a certain amount of savvy and awareness. I would say like half of our audience, 3/4 of our audience is probably aware. Okay, they get what that means and but I would say almost 1-to-1 for the people who are aware of that little dynamic are also capable of realizing like it's completely meaningless. It's a total fig leaf. It means nothing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, this goes back to what we talked about before about the sort of, centrist libs turning against this. But there used to be, this class of yes, queen Democrats who will take symbolic victories, like Nancy Pelosi doing the clap, and they'll say like, yes, queen, and like you're a traitor to the Democratic Party if you say that is really a symbolic victory. Well, like at this moment of crisis, and this is a real change, like all those people are no longer satisfied with symbolic victories. And these were like, your hardline soldiers who, like, if they had been Japanese, would be fighting in the Philippines until in the 1960s and 70s. Those people have given up the ghost. They've realized, the emperor has led us down a bad path and has destroyed everything that we have ever fought for. And they will no longer, Chuck Schumer does not have yes, queen, Riz. Let's just put it that way.
Yes, and I'm glad you used Riz there. My kids, you could place the age of our kids exactly by your use of that. And you, sir, you have Sigma Riz for using that term. But the scenario where Schumer, Gillibrand, but maybe 3 or 4 people who we anticipate to vote for cloture don't vote for cloture. Like the vote's supposedly going to happen in about 15-20 minutes. There is some talk that there is, and I think, would you say Josh Marshall suggested this?
It was actually David Dayen.
Oh, David Dayen said that one senator could hold up
Or deny unanimous consent for a time agreement, basically.
Could deny unanimous consent, which would delay things. Because right now, in the terms of the reports we're getting back from our listeners who've been calling all of these offices, all the voicemails are shut down. The Capitol switchboard shut down. And so they're getting inundated with calls.
Yeah.
If there's another 12 hours, they're going to get more calls. And so putting aside, let's say there's a mutiny in this, let's look at the other scenario, which is more likely, that 7 or 8 Democrats vote for cloture. They go on to vote, and then they all vote against, except for Fetterman and Schumer. They'll vote for the Republican budget. Where do you think this goes after that? Because there doesn't seem to me to be, as far as I can tell, any major legislative sort of conflict that will happen until the Republican budget. I mean, they're not going to do anything until they get this Republican budget squared away. So they think they can lay low.
Crazy thing here, that this was actually their moment of leverage, right?
Yeah.
And some of them, like earlier in the year, were saying, we don't have any leverage, we don't have any power, but like once the budget comes up, we'll have leverage, right? And so, the one time they have leverage, they don't use it. And basically, I think that basically this is why we're seeing an uprising, and politics will move away from whatever, expecting them to do anything, and we'll move within the Democratic Party. How do we get rid of these guys? How do we get rid of Schumer?
I mean, that's the thing, is that it seems to me you're going to have 6 to 8 months of, we got nothing to do.
Yeah.
And so where are we going to, there's no fight against the Republicans, at least in that.
I'm sorry, Sam. I have to correct you there. Chuck Schumer has a new book out. He will be going on a book tour. So he actually does have something to do.
No, Chuck Schumer does. But I'm saying everybody outside of the Senate, I think all that energy is going to go somewhere. And
I think it would be a pity if Chuck Schumer's book tour were suddenly inundated by thousands of angry Democrats.
If I could go on to Folly Market and make a bet right now, I would. That is a bet I would take.
Well, I did tweet out the locations for next week for his book tours, just in case people.
We have a lot of readers in our audience.
He'll be in Baltimore Monday. He'll be in New York City Tuesday. He'll be in Washington D.C. Wednesday. He'll be in Philly Thursday, and Saturday he will be in the Bay Area. So take with that information what you will.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, basically, we're in agreement. Like, the larger dynamic will be that this angry, massive Democrats, the only way their energy can turn is against the party now, which is why, like, in a lot of ways, I think like Hakeem Jeffries, let's just say he's no Nancy Pelosi, but he's actually shown more political intelligence than I would have expected, and Chuck Schumer hasn't, because for whatever reason, Schumer is much more insulated from public opinion.
Well, he's not running again until 2028, and for all we know, he may not. This could be his swan song.
And with
I think he's going to die in office. I mean, I think he.
Oh God, but AOC, if he doesn't resign, is going to primary challenge him. It seems pretty clear. And and my guess is that he's going to basically see the writing on the wall and probably say this will be my last term, and then that seat is open for her, because with this, he can't withstand this. I mean, I try not to get ahead of my skis. I infamously thought Kamala would win easily, and that was wrong. But there is a scenario here where Schumer has signed his own kind of the end of his own political career, at least as leader of the Democrats. I think that that's eventually going to happen regardless of how this cloture vote goes, because I'm sorry, the base is outraged right now. And my dream scenario for the next half hour is, or I guess if they are able to extend this vote, is that Schumer, Gillibrand, Fetterman, maybe a few others, go out on a limb, and the rest of the party saws off that limb and they fall off the tree, because there's a chance that if there are people that are smart political actors who have been eyeing, say, Senate Majority Leader or leader of the Democrats in the Senate, that they start to whip some votes privately and say, this is how we get rid of this guy, and then we can get elevated to the top of leadership. It's just Machiavellian stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a possible scenario. I've learned not to underestimate, how Democrats will stick with, bad leaders and bad politicians. Despite the fact that you have much more severe situations than this, where they've actively lost all mental faculty. So I think.
I mean, honestly, Dianne Feinstein was chairing these crucial committee hearings in the judiciary. And it was, I mean, everyone must have known, she doesn't know where she is.
I'm saying it's a dream scenario.
Yes. I mean, the question is, I think there's a leadership crisis. The question is there, at what point do we reach a critical mass where there's enough Democrats that are angry that they will overthrow the system? Because until now, the rule has been, it's my turn, right?
Yeah.
Like Hillary Clinton, it's my turn. And then really Joe Biden, it's my turn. And Dianne Feinstein, it was her turn to
Jerry Connolly,
Jerry
turn.
Connolly. And even I think Dave Weigel, a friend of the program, I mentioned this case in Texas, I believe. It was a person who had died and then of cancer and replaced by another politician whose turn it was, who also had cancer. It's not Connolly. So this is this is a party that's deeply committed to seniority, towards keeping the people who have power in power. But at some point, I think it's unsustainable. The question is, I think steel-manning Schumer, right? I think his thinking is people are going to forget this, right? That in 2026 we'll get back at least the House, so we might actually get the Senate, and then we can really go after Trump, and Trump will become very unpopular, and then I'll be the hero, and then the Baileys will love me, and the fake Irish will be my friend, and so that is his dream. That is Schumer's dream thing, and I actually don't think, given who he is and the fact that he's reached this pinnacle, he's not going to ever.
No, that's the problem with all of these senators. It was the problem with Barack Obama. They all had a formula that got them to where they are, and so they assume you always have to follow that formula. And
Well, I mean, part of the problem with gerontocracy is that the mental world of these people is in the past, right? I'm willing to think that people like the Baileys existed maybe in the 1970s, that there were some people he had met at a party and, wanted to be imaginary friends with. But, they don't exist now. And these sort of moderate Republicans that are going to turn on Trump don't exist now. But Chuck Schumer's mental universe is not the world that we live in, and it hasn't been for a long time.
Let me ask you one last question that is related to that. The Democrats' fealty to seniority, and we should say in the Republican caucus, it's not the same way.
Nope.
No, they don't do it that way.
Yeah, they're a real political party.
What do you think that is? I mean, why is that? Is it because? Is it a generational thing? Is it something that why that fealty to seniority, or is it just simply? I mean, I can understand how it works. It's we've been here, so we're all going to vote to empower ourselves because we're here, But is it because there was never a class of Democrats that came in where they have the there was not enough turnover? The Democrats never lost as many seats. So, I mean, if everybody comes in the same wave, then I can see you have more of an argument of we're not going to do this by seniority because nobody's got seniority. And so it's not.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Republicans had been out of power. I think it really goes back to the 90s, where the Republicans had been out of power for a long time. And there were a bunch of people, up and comers like Newt Gingrich, who saw the opportunity, who saw that, if we overturn not just the Democrats, but the older generation of Republicans, we can bring in, that's my opportunity. That's my Machiavellian moment. to rise, right? And the Republicans are, and I should say not just the Republicans, like you actually go to like political parties all over the world, and they are interested in maintaining power. And one thing they do is if a leader is unpopular, you push them out, right? Like you put out even
Or
Margaret
if the
Thatcher.
party loses the election, leadership resigns and they get fresh leadership.
Yeah. And you are here in Canada, Trudeau, right? Like, liberals wanted to win the next election. So, like, this guy's unpopular. Let's get rid of him. Let's not wait for, a disastrous debate where he's like openly senile in front of millions. But the Democrats didn't have that moment of like, like we're out of power. This is the way we can seize power. But more, I think it's this aversion to politics, and it comes from being an ideologically diverse party. That is to say, the Republicans are pretty like more unified in their commitment to the right, whereas the Democrats have centrist, liberals, and now a left faction. And within that context, like you think like you don't want to have internal battles, so you just have a principle of seniority, and you don't have to have internal battles about politics and where we should stand.
It just happens automatically.
It happens automatically, and I think that is it's a grave kind of mistake. And actually, I think that also explains the fact that it's a non-ideological party, and it also explains why conflict-averse people like Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries rise to the top, because they're the ones who can talk to all different factions and claim a kind of technocratic expertise, and then claim, although clearly they do have preferences and factional things, but they try to disguise it more, and they try to avoid political fights within the party that would make the party have to choose and to take a strong stance. Those are the types of people that rise in this political party. Now, having said that, I just don't think that that's sustainable. I mean, what we've seen is that model has lost to Donald Trump twice. Has created this situation where you're having basically a government that's committed to overturning the Great Society and the New Deal through executive fiat. And I think enough Democrats, including the Neera Tandons of the world, including the centrist wing of the party, who are like just like realize this is not sustainable. We have to change. So I think that if there's ever a Tea Party moment for the Democrats, if there's ever a moment where you could get an outside takeover that challenges them and primaries them, I think that's it. And I think the work of the next few years is going to be to try to build the infrastructure to do that.
Jeet Heer, national affairs correspondent for The Nation magazine. I had wanted to talk about your piece in The Nation about COVID. We just, the 13th, yesterday was in fact the 5-year anniversary of New York City shutting down.
Yeah.
But we'll have to wait. It doesn't always have to be on an anniversary.
That's right. We can take it up on another occasion. Yes.
All right, Jeet Heer, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Always great to be on.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.